All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to another NEARC Community Event. My name is Katie Grillo, and I'm the GIS Web Technology Specialist at the City of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I'm also on the NEARC Board of Directors. So I'm here today to help facilitate this event, but we are excited to have our friends from Esri and a couple other guest speakers here today to talk about imagery and all sorts of exciting things about that. So before we dive in, just a little bit of housekeeping. This event is being recorded. I will send a follow-up email to all of you that includes the recording. It'll also include some resources from our presenters and their PowerPoints, like that kind of stuff. So no worries about frantically taking screenshots or trying to remember links. We'll send you everything after the fact. Also, just a brief overview of why we're here today. So NEARC is the Northeast ArcGIS Users Group, and we are a nonprofit organization that hosts two major conferences in the Northeast every year. So we have a one-day event in the spring and a three-day event in the fall. And so in addition to those two major conferences, we've started to host these community events. And these are designed to be a deep dive into a specific topic. They're supposed to be interactive. We will definitely have time for question and answer and discussion at the end of our session. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to put things in the chat. We will try to monitor that throughout. But just so you know, mark your calendars, please, for our events in 2024. We have our Spring NEARC conference is going to be May 21st at Salem State University in Massachusetts. And then our fall event is going to be October 27th through the 30th in Burlington, Vermont. So hopefully we'll get some fall foliage, some amazing time up in Burlington. So please save the date for October 27th to the 30th. All right, done with announcements. I'm going to hand it now over to Tom Sweet to get us started. Please, Tom.
Sure. Hey, and thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when it comes up. No.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. And so I want to thank everybody for having me. I'm on the imagery and remote sensing team. I have been doing imagery and remote sensing since the 90s. My specialty, if you will, I'm not a geographer. I'm not a GIS nerd. I am a business management person who specialized in IT, and I discovered GIS when all of a sudden these things called digital orthos were trying to run around my network and wreak havoc. So that's how I kind of got into it. We do a variety of presentations throughout the Northeast. I am working with state and local government and public safety groups, basically east of the Mississippi. So what I want to be sure you understand is this is for you, right? And I also want to stress that your voice matters. There are times when I might take my Esri hat off, and it might sound a little bit strange coming from an Esri person, but that's okay in my world. For my Esri colleagues, sorry. There is a new group. It's a closed group by invitation called the Imagery and Remote Sensing User Group. If you're interested in joining, send me an email at tsuite@esri.com, and I will send you an invitation. I'm going to go over a little bit of kind of what's new in imagery and kind of sort of from the what's the art of the possible perspective. And then I have some colleagues with me from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Aviation Division, and they're going to give a specific presentation on using ArcGIS Reality in their workspace. So, from my perspective, imagery and remote sensing, they're not interchangeable, by the way. They are critical foundations of any GIS, of any healthy GIS. I don't really see a GIS that does not use remotely sensed content or imagery as complete, and that can be from a whole variety of perspectives, right? from environments. You can get content from drones and sensors up in space and cameras on posts and in your hands and aerial. All of that is stuff that to me is fair game. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if
sure,
you could speak up a little bit, your audio is a little bit low.
sure. Is that better?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a bit better. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm sorry about that. I don't quite understand why that would be, but so you'll hear me refer to the rural edge occasionally, and that's because it's something in all of our environments that defies boundaries, right? There's no real geopolitical boundary that defines a rural edge. What I mean by that is it is where natural, virgin space runs into um, developed space or in some process of being developed. And so it kind of, it falls everywhere. It's not, just in this space or just in that space. And it has the potential to affect the quality of life. And it can make a variety um, of people vulnerable to change. So you'll hear me talk about that. And our team does a 2-day free briefing from place to place to place, where we talk in specifics about what the art of the possible is in using imagery to manage change. One of the ones I did was up in New England, and I used New York as an example of what I mean. And if we look, here are some water supply sites that I found. Which are all over the place in New York, as you might expect. Then we have this interesting transmission line that comes down and creates an interesting boundary for things like wildlife and things along those lines. And then there's the opportunity zones where development is being encouraged through tax incentives or whatever. And this isn't meant to be complete. It's just to demonstrate that when you start looking at these uses, you will find them intermixed, and that is one of the characteristics of that rural edge, and it's one of the characteristics of the strength of imagery to monitor change as you're looking at this stuff. So when you start pulling on all the rest of the uses, and then the best one last is the Superfund sites, right? So there's lots of different use cases, and in some cases they're competitive, right? They don't really go well with each other. Looked at Vermont. I did a rural edge briefing up in Vermont with the University of Vermont, and we pointed out some similar types of areas that overlap with each other, particularly up in this area. So I'll save you the animation. But so one of the things that we find are influencing factors that we need to deal with, that we need to embrace, even though it doesn't sound like remotely sensed content, is that we need to find the drivers of the decisions to change, right? They're usually in economics, they can be in governance, they can be in regulations. If you drill down a little bit, you start dealing with looking at changes in impervious surfaces and the impacts of that, the loss of green spaces, environmental impacts when you start getting into wastewater and runoff and things along those lines. And then you have the development projects, right? And the tax assessment changes that take place that can change the economics of an area. And then you have the visualization process that imagery and remotely sensed content, particularly when you start visualizing in 3D, which we'll talk about a little bit more deeply later. When it comes to managing change, right, with remotely sensed content, as we said a little earlier, you can get content from all over the place. You can get LiDAR, you can get aerial, you can get drones, you can get information from satellite. And to me, from our team's perspective, we don't really care. We want you to use it all. We want you to be able to use it all. And one of the reasons that we want you to be able to use it all is that imagery itself is very visual and very compelling. We've all heard the phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words, or seeing is believing. Both of those things tend to run true. And so, when you see things, and I'll pick on my own home state, when you see things like this, you don't need a lot of words to describe something's drastically wrong. All right. This is called the Knox Mine disaster, where they accidentally poked a hole in the Susquehanna River. They put 200 rail cars down that whirlpool to try to stop it. They put trucks loads of hay, of railroad ties and telephone poles, and it failed. But the purpose of our presentation today is not necessarily to get into the Knox Mine disaster, but you can see that visual is very compelling, right? And then you have the outcome of that is streams start changing these unique colors, and you start to get debris that comes from the things that were dumped in there. Again, it's a very visual picture. You don't need a lot of words. And the houses started popping out of the ground because the mine pool was flooded. Sometimes that's 8 to 10 feet in the air. And so we went out and GPSed them so we could make it authoritative, which we'll speak to shortly. And then you get more visual information when you see land use that may not go so well together, right? You've got some open pit mines right next to an urban or a suburban area. So a little, just in the last slide, we talked about authoritative. That's one of the powers of imagery, is that it can be authoritative. And basically, if you take all of the science away from it, as it's ground control. It's being able to know that the things that you're seeing are where you're seeing them with a given known tolerance level. And that known tolerance level is what allows you to put it into your data sets and depend on it in the critical decision making mode, right? So as we dive into all of this, I'm frequently working with a lot of specific organizations, and the conversation ultimately drifts towards, how do you prepare yourself to transform remotely sensed content into, sustainable knowledge, into decision-making capabilities. And it starts like real estate, right? Location, location, location. We're talking in imagery and remotely sensed content. It's all about your application, and you'll hear me say that a lot. So you have to know what your applications are. You also have to understand the terms and conditions and specifications of your contracts and agreements. There can be situations where we were working with one organization who had acquired high quality imagery at a fairly high cost, and buried in the terms and conditions were the statement that you couldn't point third-party software or AI or deep learning tools or machine learning tools at those pixels. If that contradicts with your application, you're going to have some challenges, right? So, and there's staff bandwidth. You can have a lot of staff, their time availability and their expertise have kind of got lined up with what your applications are. Sharing and dissemination strategies are also things that come to the forefront of figuring out what your strategy is to make this information work in the critical decision-making process. Knowing not only the size, but the types of your libraries, the numbers of your services are often more important than the size of your data library. I've seen organizations with 20, 30 terabytes of imagery, but they have over 100 services. That's a completely different demand than an organization with 2 petabytes of imagery with 10 services that are static, right? So understanding that architecture helps you get your strategy together. Knowing whether or not you're going to, oftentimes we have, hour after hour after hour of meetings, and I don't hear the LiDAR word or the FODAR word or, full motion video or 3D or digital twin. And then once we start asking the question, we start getting oh yeah, we're going to do that. You need to know that back in this application part, right? So then you got the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, and the deep learning. That's not a product, that is a process. And so understanding how and when you're going to do that is important. Again, the number of services, particularly when you come to using raster functions and raster analytics, becomes important to know. Timelines, I think we're preaching to the choir. And then, lastly, drones, right? If drones are going to be used, they have the ability to to really bring high quality data. We'll talk about that in just a sec. I like to use an analogy when we're talking about how to embrace all of this that's similar to a philharmonic orchestra. All right. So you've defined your applications. You've gone through all of those discovery conversations that we just saw in the last slide. So now it's time to go out and acquire your content. Once you acquire it, you got to store it someplace. It's either going to be in the cloud or on-prem or in some kind of hybrid arrangement. From your raw content, you're then going to realize that you've captured reality because that was part of your application plan, and you start creating derivative products. Those can be anything from, digital surface models to true orthos to any variety of products, but those products again are defined to serve the applications you've defined. From there, you get into taking your derivative products and making either preferably dynamic observations about it to start to understand the challenges that gave rise to your applications, right? So you might be tracking activities, you might be looking at reoccurring traffic patterns. It all depends on what your application are, but after you've started to, organize your observations, you can then look for patterns. You take those patterns and then you visualize them for your decision makers who don't necessarily know the finer parts of the rest of this type of management structure. So I like to use the analogy that that's kind of your orchestra, right? And so to look at that same wheel again, using that analogy, you have different instruments at different places, right? And each instrument is played by a different professional, and it produces a different sound that when taken all in concert together, not to use a pun, but is the sound that you're looking to create, right? And so in this, I'm not real heavy into products. It's about the imagery and it's about the remote sensing. So when you're working with your content, you're talking about, various image handling products and extensions that allow you to manipulate those products and create the derivative products, right? So you'll see some overlap here. You'll also see some different tools that might be specific to an application like drones or reality as it comes out. And then you start to extract that information at scale. It's okay to do a small project one time, but when you have to do another product, continuously for, in one scenario we have where their system is getting 2,000 hits per minute per hour. All right, that's a larger scale operation. So if that's part of your application, you need to understand it and design for it. Then you get to the human engagement part, and we'll talk about that because that's not when your job is complete. It actually leads to getting feedback back and creating a feedback loop that allows you to compress time. And we'll talk about that. So at the end of the day, I don't really care where you get your imagery from or your remotely sensed content. It's our job to make sure you can use it. It's coming at us and just increasing velocities. It's exponential. In fact, I read an article in Forbes the other day that 90% of the data that we have access to was developed in the last 2 years. That's how quickly this data is exploding. And along with the quantity of data come new formats and new sensors. It used to be if you wanted imagery, you had to use a satellite or a plane. Now you can go outside with your phone, hold it up and take a picture, and it's expected to be used, right? Or we want it to be used. Then you've also got growing numbers of very creative developers who want to push the envelope. So you also have to make plans for that if your application looks like it's going to go outside of the COTS boundaries. So all of these things are things that you want to consider. We realize that as we build in more complexity, or I'm sorry, as we build in more capabilities, by nature it becomes more complex. And so one of the challenges that we have is keeping that complexity curve, if I can use that, as flat as possible. And that takes us back to our second slide where I said, your voice matters, right? Join that user club. And if you see something that you like, say it. If you see something you don't like, say it. If you see something that would be great to have, say it. That's how we make our processes better. So kind of wrapping up here before we get into some of the eye candy, you're looking at, 5 or 6 pieces, right? You're going to capture your data, you're going to process it, put it into some kind of a production pipeline, then you're going to pass that over to the application systems where they're going to take benefit of observation or the ability to observe and look at spatial patterns. They're going to be able to do some of their own analysis on the fly, possibly use deep learning tools. And then with the advent of new technology like drones and other types of highly accurate information, you're going to be able to get into situational awareness that gets you closer and closer to real time. Another way to look at this is what we're trying to do is essentially help you collect, organize, and store, analyze and visualize your information, exploit it for the purpose of gaining knowledge to create the wisdom, right? To support sustainable, informed, dynamic decision making. And if that's not happening, again, we go back to the user group. We'd like to know about it. We'd like to know where we're falling down. So those are things that we do. When we look at again, that orchestra analogy, there are some instruments that are, your basic essentials, right? And I'm not going to belabor the point here, but Pro, the extensions, Image Online, if you're looking to publish and you have a smaller library, then there's workflow specific add-ons. And the key isn't necessarily what these are as much as it is the category that they fall in. There are essentials, then there's workflow specific things. You don't need site scan if you're not using drones, right? You don't need video server if you're not going to try to harness the power of video, but then that all goes back to your applications, right? So I know I'm going fast, but I'm thinking we have a time thing here, and I don't want to run out on my colleagues. So after you've harnessed your workflow, your essentials and your workflow specifics, then you got to figure out how you're going to disseminate, right? Back to that strategy slide. Are you going to use on enterprise? Are you going to do it on prem, or are you going to do it in the cloud? I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. There's your way, and so those are the things that we try to hit on. The one thing that I like to bring up and spend just a bit of time on is this notion of, you've heard me mention compressing time. You've heard me, now you're seeing a statement saying decreasing time to value. How this works, and this reflects my business background. Now I'm back into my educational world. You have the left side or the blue side where you're going to have what I call producers. And these producers are going to be in your organization and doing their job. They're going to be harnessing those products that we were talking about to do the kind of work that they needed to do in order to meet the challenges of the applications that the organizations have identified, right? And so they produce this information and then they disseminated it, and it goes out into the world. And consumers, either, I'm going to call them consumers, they could be colleagues across the hall inside your organization, they could be constituents walking around the street, they could be customers. I'm going to call them consumers, right? So the consumers is the beginning of that human engagement, right? What we do is not really worth a whole lot if humans don't engage. And so as they take that information and they go about doing the jobs, again, identified in those applications, they're out in the field, typically. They're collecting data, they're doing analysis, they're transforming it into knowledge. And oftentimes what happens in that act is you have collaboration. And the output of collaboration tends to be more data. And that more data goes back into the system. The producers grab it, use it, put it back into the system, and you've got this, infinity loop going on. What happens is typically, if it's built soundly, you decrease the time to value. And if you decrease the time to value, then the system itself becomes more valuable more quickly, and it gets used more often. If it gets used more often, it becomes more valuable. If it becomes more valuable, you start reducing transaction cost. So now what you've done is you've compressed time, you've actually produced time that can be used for other activities, and you've also reduced the transaction cost, right? So you get some cost savings. So when we start looking at the different kinds of ways that you can use imagery, in this instance, here's a vehicle mounted sensor that is collecting information on the cracks on the road, and the supporting computer systems are classifying the cracks based on some identified criteria by the application, and they're maybe green is okay, yellow is let's send a crew out to inspect, red let's send somebody out to repair. You can then also go and look at projects, right? You can technically you can use some of the extension programs to have consultants or people who are in the construction sides who are looking to produce your product. This is popular with the DOTs. And they use drones. You can create flight plans that can be replicated, right? Repeated and repeated and repeated, regardless of who's flying it. And now as they monitor their project, it goes back into the system, right? Damage control or damage assessment rather, right? That's pretty straight up. And there's your imagination, right? There's assessment changes, there's infrastructure inspection, there's it's safer to send a drone into a big yellow cloud coming out of a train wreck than it is to send people. So planning for events, emergency management, responding to flooding, all of those kind of things. Then you also get into the world of things your eyeballs cannot see, right? Our eyes and our brains, they make seeing 3D really easy. And so it's hard. And what we're trying to do is take advantage of that in the systems that we use to support what we're trying to do. So you can also bring in things. I think I have a thermal a little bit later, but you can see you can also now start to go inside of buildings, right? So that's that. It's no longer just this outdoor thing. You can combine your digital data in any fashion that you can get it, and that's what we're striving for. Drones, we talked about it. They are just exploding. They can be accurate. They can produce high quality information. They can be fairly easy to use, and they can be a low cost compared to other things like aerial. In this particular instance, I'm showing a mission where we flew the building I'm sitting in. And in this instance, what I wanted to show is after the necessary systems checks take place, the drone basically takes off. It goes through the system checks, right? Aircraft's okay, cameras okay, batteries are okay. Any customized flight checks that have been made for humans are okay. But the key is, which you can see in real time up here in the right-hand corner, is you can see what the drone sees. Is that valuable in this? We're creating a 3D model of the building, not really. But in other instances where you're dealing with, eye in the sky kind of applications, again, it goes back to your applications. But you can see as the drone flies a typical lawnmower pattern, and it's sped up so we don't have to waste a lot of time. You can see everything that the drone sees, and you can flip the two screens around. The neat thing is that if you are as the controller, if you join a Teams meeting or a Zoom's meeting and share your screen, anybody who's authorized to join that meeting can see what you can see, and that's a real cheap way to get that job done. There's other ways to do it with way more capabilities, but that's one way that you can skin that cat, and that's one of the lessons is that there's often multiple ways to do what you're trying to do. The thing with drones is you've got the capability of doing 2D, 3D modeling and oriented inspection, right? So we'll get I think, into that a little bit later. The key is to me to understand that the process is broken down into 5 pieces, right? Task it, collect it, process it, exploit it, and disseminate it, right? And so there are varieties of ways to do that. With our particular product, you can see there are multiple roles, operators, access viewers, and you can see there, you're going to get a copy of this so you can see what the individual role differences are. One of the key importances is there's 2 deployment methodologies. One is for unlimited storage and specific named users, or reverse that, and there's unlimited users with specific reserved amounts of storage. So those are all things that we can get into in a deeper way. There's also ancillary functionality, like, maintaining the drone fleet, maintaining your users, knowing when things like their certifications are up and things along those lines. And then, maintaining customized, flight checklists. There's all kinds of folks that produce that stuff. The the drone issue is kind of unusual. There, there are many drones. For us, the drone decision is about who can we control automatically. Recently, there's been a lot of motion, particularly coming up the coast from Florida, about prohibiting any drone or software that's not made in the United States. That may or may not be the choice of your organization, but that does have an impact on your strategic planning. FreeFly is an American-made drone. It's NDA compliant. We're also working on the M300 RTK and Phantom 4 from DJI, for those who still want to use the DJI drones, and we're working on Wingtra. And if I understand correctly, there will be an announcement at the Fed GIS that we've announced a partnership with SkyEagle. So video server is another possibility that we can get into, where you want to use real motion video or full motion video in the service of your applications. And that can be, from searching, a simple search, to discovery, to publishing the pieces or parts of your video, to incorporating them fully into analysis and feature extraction. So again, all goes back to those applications. Video server is just another functionality like image server. It's all part of that system of systems approach that I use the orchestra analogy about. And there are other pieces and parts that are required. In this instance, it's, I think, Excalibur and 3.1 of Pro or better. But that all goes with deeper dives in this information than we have time for today. Reality is what we were trying to get to today. It is, I think, an important piece. I am particularly focused on 3D. I think that the base maps that are currently being used, are so much more than a pretty picture, and they become even evidently so when you create 3D base maps for your organization rather than 2D. And you can create digital twins. You can have a separate view vantage point into your organization to do what ifs. You can look at you can go under the ground, you can go in the buildings. It becomes, again, back to the way you want to define your strategic applications. So with that, I think I've probably talked long enough. I'll hand it over to my colleagues from the Massachusetts DOT Aeronautics Division. Sinan, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, I will stop sharing. I think you can take it away now.
Actually, I cannot share yet. Okay. Can you see my slides?
I can.
Great. So thank you for having me and my colleague Jimmy today. My name is Sinan Aboud. I am the team leader for the data analytics team with the Masdot Aeronautics division, and I have Skelchum or Jimmy. He's a data analyst in our team that he will do the the demonstration of the application that we developed using reality capture, and I will do a very simple presentation to introduce our organization. So Masdot Aeronautics is responsible for promoting safer air transportation, cleaner, more efficient, and more economical advantages for people. We are basically regulates and promote and air transportation in the Commonwealth. We are maintaining 35 of the 38 public use airports, and we support the economic development, job growth, and reduce aviation environmental impacts. And we works with all state agencies, universities, quasi agencies within the state of Massachusetts by providing UAS service. So the Mass Aeronautics divisions, we sit under the Advanced Aviation Technology Group, which provides new technologies and new aviation technologies and solutions for complicated problem, especially in the transportation field here in the state of Massachusetts. We have 3 programs under the Advanced Aviation and Technology Group: the Commonwealth UAS Integration Program, the Drone Operations Program, or Drone Ops, and Data and Analytics Team. You see there is a back and forth arrow between the drone ops and data analytics, because we collaborate on all the projects and we are in constant communication with the drone ops on a daily basis. The drone ops and the data team, we operate under 2 lines of effort: the capability development effort and the demonstration effort. Under the capability development effort, we are responsible for managing the US operations across Massachusetts. Also, we are responsible for securing the storage and analysis of the collected UAS imagery, and maintaining the fleet and the sensors that we operate. And also we are responsible for the secure dissemination of our products, and I should say applications, through Masdot users. At the same time, we provide solution and demonstration to integrate the technology or the solutions that we provide to Masdot transportation, and see how our solution can be integrated with our systems or with the overall Masdot solutions enterprise. So what we do, we fly with all local agencies, municipalities, and quasi-governmental entities. We fly all over Massachusetts. We provide our services essentially to Masdot transportation, which means the highway and the MBTA, the railroads. We fly roads, bridges, airports, and rails and transit facilities. And we fly everything else too. So we fly wetlands, we do environmental monitorings, we fly streams, we fly in damaged areas too. This is the drones that we currently work. I'm not sure if this is like, very up to date, but this is, let's say, some of the drones that we own and operate and maintain. And you can see that we have lots of DJIs and Skydio, and we have both the quadcopters and the vertical takeoff drones and the fixed wing drones. And each one, have different applications. So we have some flexibility in our flying ops. We have actually more than those three sensors, but that's the one that I could gather on the fly. And we have also LiDAR sensors from Phoenix Systems that we utilize in our LiDAR collection projects. In the fiscal year of 2023, we flew up, and that's more than 1,300 mission, and that's just from, I think, up to last week. You can see that most of our flies or missions are with MassDOT, and in second place the MBTA, then the Executive Office of Energy and Environment, and then the other section or other agencies of MassDOT. Where we fly all over the state of Massachusetts. From this map, you can see that maybe most of our missions are more focused in and around the Boston areas, but most of the projects that going on right now are in these areas. But at the same time, we are trying to diversify our project portfolio and try to fly over all the state of Massachusetts. We have a diverse and a range of projects that we do. Starts with the highway, mostly infrastructure inspection and mapping survey. With rail and transit, we do rail inspection, subway tunnel inspection, and asset management, and this applies to both highway and the MBTA. We do airport flying and airport inspection and accident investigation, and also we do emergency management project across the state of Massachusetts. This is a copy of my slide. So this is just an overview of our functions within the drone ops and the data team. We have two major blocks, which are the project workflow and the data lake. The project workflow consists of the project approval. Every submitted request for flying goes through a process to approve the projects, make sure that we can do the project and it's safe to do it, and goes after gets approval, goes through mission planning and risk management, and then after that gets handed over to flight operation, which they fly and collect the data. After collecting data, they push the raw UAS data, if it's imagery or PR pics or videos, to our data lake. Then the data team takes over and do our magic or our analytics, and then we push back to our dissemination platform, so the customers or our users can access it and leverages in that in their decision making. This is a little bit a complicated workflow, so I wanted to show the more simplified workflow. So we have the two teams, the US Ops and the data analytics team, we work together and on daily basis on our projects. From the first step, when we get a flying request, we work together on the project feasibility. And then after that, the US, after the approval, US operations, they took over for mission planning and data collection. Then after that, it gets pushed to our data storage platform. And then from there, the data analytics takes over and do the analysis. And if the analysis are just for basic QoS products like true orthos, DEMs, control lines, 3D models, 3D mesh, whatever, it gets pushed to our dissemination platform, which is, in this case, we have a dedicated aeronautics data hub that master users can access and search and find the products. Or we can do more analysis if it is requested from the beginning to compile and package the products within either web maps, app, dashboard, or story maps. So for certain projects, so the user can just log into that application and start working. The applications that we are doing currently and starts from the basic US products, from the true orthos, DEMs, DSMs, 3D mesh, and control lines. For those products, we use reality capture as an extension because our development environment is ArcPro. So using the reality capture extension within ArcPro is actually enhanced our workflow, decreased the turnaround times for our products, and pushed our products quality to the sub-inch. And my colleague Jimmy, he will show you some of our products. The other applications that we do many highway construction monitoring, and then highway corridor inspection and assets. We develop the basic products in our ArcPro environment using reality capture. Then we push the products to specific applications that we develop for those projects, so the users can just log into those applications and start using the true orthos, the 3D mesh, and that environment for decision making, inspection, and for monitoring. We just developed and finished snow removal monitoring applications that we are trying to get ready for the winter season. So the highway and the MBTA, they can monitor certain locations for snow removal activities. We have an MBTA asset management that we are currently applying for all MBTA routes across the state of Massachusetts. MBTA vegetation management, this is a potential project that we are actually working on the research phase, and hopefully in the next couple of months we can put it into production. We have some environmental monitoring. One of the coolest projects that we did with the MIT, monitoring some of the wetland species. And on top of that, we do video flying and PR imagery. Moving forward for the MassDOT Aeronautics team, we would like to scale up our and streamline our UAS operation. We're trying to implement an automation wherever we can in our pipelines and our development environment, and we're trying to maintain the same quality control, quality checks that we have to make sure that all the products that we push to our dissemination platform of a high quality. And in the future, we would like to introduce more AI, machine learning, deep learning algorithms, and advanced analytics, especially in our asset management applications. With that, I will let Jimmy do the demonstration and show you some of one of the apps that we developed.
Thank you, Sinan. I will try and share my screen. Just 1 second. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, we're seeing your browser.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So, hi everyone. My name is Jimmy. I am a data analyst for the data and analytics team with the MassDOT Aeronautics. I'll be presenting the application we developed with Experience Builder for highway district District 3, and this was built completely in Experience Builder. The data and analytics team specifically, and MassDOT Aeronautics et al. Is trying to embrace the new platform for developing web applications, and try and migrate some of the applications we develop in the web application builders to the new and enhanced version of the application builder, the Experience Builder. I'll go through all the particular tabs that you see on the screen. The project itself, it's a project for a park and ride, and they use drone imagery they use different drones to fly over this particular job site and get imagery, which then was used with the reality capture extension with ARC Pro, because that's how our workflow is based in. First of all, you see here we have an Explore tab, which basically lets the users just play around with the data. There is a particular zoom extent that they could go to, and it just basically gives the user the ability to play around with the data, zoom in. They can also go to the particular facing location that they want. There is a button for facing north every time, and that's the base extent that we give our users to. On the right side, on the top part, you see we have a layer for annotations. This gives the capability to users to do annotations on the map. This could be the project manager. This could be different parts, different members of the team that oversees the construction monitoring project. You can also see different flights. We have a specific naming convention for different flights that we have, which concludes of the US flight, and then the particular date that flight occurred. For this case, we have a 2-week flight apart. So we only included 3 flights, even though this was a project that went out longer, which recently finished. And on the bottom part, you can see the legend for the different annotations, which is the different categories that the annotation team would like to use to do annotations on the map and on the application. The next tab is going to be the Compare tab, which allows the users to do a visual and temporal comparison for the particular job location. So let's say they wanted to compare this week with a flight that was 2 weeks prior to that. They could use the leading and the trailing layers. This is a feature that's built in the Experience Builder. So let's say, for example, they want to compare the November 2nd flight versus the October 19th. All they would have to do is the leading layer would be the one on the left. So they would select the 19th on the leading layer, and on the trailing layer, it would be the November 2nd. This gives they could go to the fullest zoom extent. They could also see an overall change on the job site, and if something catches their eye, like some sort of big development, like for example over here, they could go closer and see the changes that have been occurring between these 2 weeks. The zoom extent goes as close as 5 feet. That is due to the GSD that we fly. I'll get to that later when we go to the map statistics tab. But the visual comparison is a very powerful tool that allows the users to actually see what changes have visually occurred and over time. So there is no limit for how long they could go back, as long as there is a flight for that date and there were products developed for that particular flight. I'll go to the next tab, which is very important. It's called measurements and annotations. We joined these two functions together because most of the requests were that users wanted to measure something and also store that into a feature that they wanted to revisit later or update that at some point. So for example, I'm going to go to a particular area and I'm going to do some measurements. So let's say if I'm the project manager and I wanted to measure how big this particular area is, because I would have to pay the contractor who did the particular work on that area. All I would have to do is go to the measure tool, which is a built-in tool that Experience Builder offers. And I would just roughly try and create a polygon. I'm not going to go into detail, so I'm just going to finish the polygon here, and it would give me the area and parameter. I will later on jump on the accuracy of these measurements on the map statistics tab. And then let's say they wanted to do an area annotation, and let's say this is a progress phase. So they would just have to go all over it and just follow the same borders, and then they would create annotation for that particular measurement. And then they would just have to type in the 31.24 and 79.81 feet. And then if there is any particular note for this area that they wanted to say, I'm going to say this is a test comment. And then when they click create, this is stored in the particular annotations layer, which can be exported, can also be added from other dates, or you can put this into other maps if it's necessary. The other thing is when you, for example, if you wanted to go back on the Explorer tab, and when you click on that particular annotation that someone did, the cool thing is it gives you the particular date and time that someone did this annotation. So it gives the users the ability to collaborate, and it's basically a organization-wide tool that different people can use and see what others did and when they did it and how they did it, with giving the ability to also update the particular annotation. So if I wanted to update something on this particular annotation, I have the capability to do that. The next tab here is called the elevation profile, which gives the users the ability to see the particular elevation in a part of the map. All that's required from their part is to click the draw profile tool, or if there is an already selected line on the map. So all they would have to do is just draw a line, and then the application will give them an elevation profile with a very rich section of map statistics. If they go to the settings, they could select the units and the distance units. I'm just going to do feet for both of them. And I'm going to do uniform scaling just so it's nice and consistent. Then you could see, for example, here the change in elevation. When the users click this particular button, it's called profile statistics, they could see a plethora of options and statistics. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on every particular statistic here, but it basically gives an overall understanding. If you're trying to do more analysis on the elevation for this particular segment, you have a lot of statistics that could give you a lot of information for that particular part. And the lines could be also longer if you want to do like a segment of the road or something like that. The next option is called add data. This is a very basic function, but a very crucial one because it allows you to bring your own data. For example, if you have data from your own ArcGIS profile, if an organization already has an ArcGIS organization built in, within Esri ecosystem, they could just bring all the data they have. If they have something from a web server, they could use the URL to bring the data in, or if they have a shapefile for a particular building footprints, or they have a KML or a GeoJSON file format, they could bring those particular files in and analyze them. They would just be as regular other layers as well. The other section, which is a very crucial one for this particular application, is the 3D section. And this is one of the sections that users are very excited for because it gives them a very realistic perspective. And they could switch to the 3D view very easily by clicking this thumbnail. I don't know if it's very visible. By clicking this thumbnail over here in the lower left corner. That will bring them to the 3D view, and using the right click button, they could just see the actual representation of a very realistic 3D view with lots of detail. And the good thing about this is they could also do measurements in 3D. If they're not comfortable doing it in 2D, or they want to see a better angle of the particular item or particular feature on the site, for example, the stockpile over here, if they wanted to do a measurement to see how tall this particular stockpile is, they could do a line distance measurement, and all they would have to do is they could just go to the top of this particular stockpile and then also go to the bottom. There is a nice line indication, and which lets them know where the stockpile ends, and it meets the floor, the baseline. And once they finish the measurement, it gives them three very crucial statistics, which is the direct line, so top to bottom. It gives them the horizontal distance and the vertical, which is basically the height of that particular stockpile. There is numerous applications for these kind of measurements, such as volumetrics. I'm not going to get into detail of that. And the next tab is going to be, I'm going to switch to 2D here. The next tab is going to be something that's really important for sharing and collaboration, if it's required from that particular team, is the ability to print the maps in a lot of options, such as PNG. They could do SVGs, which is a very high quality product. They could do EPS if they're into the Adobe suite of products, or just a regular PDF for sharing across team members or email. And then they could see the print results and share it with whoever they like to. The next tab is probably the most important one, which allowed us to build trust with the engineers and with the different districts of the highway. It's called the map statistics. Switching from the regular ortho mapping workspace to the reality extension in ArcGIS Pro allowed us to present our work and actually give them proof of what we actually think and what we actually are presenting to them. I'm going to take an example. For example, the November 2nd here, the November 2nd slide. The Arc Pro extension gives us very rich and detailed statistics on the quality and accuracy of the product, which allowed us to give products to our users and to present the maps and the layers to the stakeholders with the certainty that what they see is what they get, and what they measure is accurate. And that is due to these four major statistics that we get from the app, and we present them in a form of chart, which is the GCP RMSE and ground resolution and mean reprojection error and sigma naught. I'm not going to go into major detail, but basically the GCP RMSE is it's a global measure of quality. And the American Society for Remote Sensing and Imagery, the ASPRS, basically suggests that if anything is under an inch, it follows the standards. And for this particular flight, we can see that the y-axis is in meters, so we can see that the change in x and the change in y and change in z all are all under 2.54 meters, 2.54 centimeters, which is an inch. So that means that we can guarantee to the users and to shareholders that this is sub-inch accuracy, and the measurement that they did on the measurement tab are going to be accurate. The next one is the ground resolution. This gives them basically the spatial resolution, which means 1 pixel here is going to be equal to 1.3 centimeters, since this is in meters. And then the mean reprojection error and sigma naught are pretty complicated statistics, but the overall is based on the standards. As long as they are under 1 and under 0.5 respectively, that means that you have a very quality product, and you can assure the users that what they measure is going to be accurate, and there would be no need to actually go do the ground truthing, because we already did the heavy lifting and the work on our end to assure them that the product is accurate, and they can do measurements and actually confide on those measurements and use them in their planning and in their, for example, on paying different subcontractors for the work that they did based on the measurements on the map, without having the need to go on the field and actually measure them themselves, which saves them a lot of work hours and a lot of money as a result of that. The last tab is going to be the submit feedback. We take feedback very, very seriously, and we want the users to give us feedback. We received a lot of feedback. This application was developed in close contact with the Highway Division 3, and basically we get all their feedback and we incorporate so we can make the application better as we go on. If you have any questions, I am happy to take them, or if you have any questions on the chat, I'll take a look. But that is going to be the presentation from my end.
Jimmy, this is Tom at Esri. Can I ask this question?
Yes.
What's the timeline or the time it takes to go from the raw imagery to get it into a product that you're presenting here in Experience Builder?
If we take it from the project inception, like where the project is submitted for approval, or you're thinking from the moment that we collect the data?
From when you collect the data.
Okay, so from the data collection, the process is getting the data into our Pro, or as of now we do local storage. So all the time it takes to download the data, which could be 5 gigs, 10 gigs, whatever that takes, depending on your internet connection speed. And then depending on how big the project is for the Framingham Park and Ride application, takes about an hour or two based on our workstation powers to develop all the products, and then putting them into the application is some extra time. But the turnover time has been immensely increased since we have the ArcGIS Reality. So I'm going to go ahead and say probably a day or two. So within 48 hours, there could be a very high quality and very accurate product that we can put out there. Given some other factors, for example, we have an already made shell for construction monitoring projects. So if this is construction monitoring project, all we have to do is generate a template and then fill it with the new data that we have. So if we have a shell for the particular project, and if the data is already downloaded, or if it's in the cloud, which is something that we're working on using like an S3 bucket, that would probably decrease the time to probably less than 48 hours. There could be a very high quality product, an accurate one with the map statistics embedded on that application.
That's great. Thank you.
If there is any other questions, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, Tom, sweet. Were we handing it back over to you, or is this now
Sure.
when we can go into our discussion time?
I have a couple more, just to exercise people's imagination, if that's what we want to do.
Sure. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes before we should get to
Okay.
Q&A and closing.
You can see my screen?
Yep. And in the meantime, if people do have questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll address them at the very
Sure.
end.
Yeah,
Thanks.
this is just to exercise people's imaginations, right? So This is an example of where we built a 3D model of an island in a it was with drone imagery. It was laid out in a crosshatch pattern, and it was combined with 3D data that we could get from the USGS, and ultimately it was an exercise in finding a lost soldier. And so this is really just a quick demo to show, you know, your imagination's really your limit. And I think we all need to be thinking in 3D, personally. But that's my my personal perspective on this. And so you can see where the 3D contour information and hydrology was able to be combined with the information that we collected. And now you have a 3D, I don't know if I want to call it a digital twin, but you certainly have a model that you can work with to examine the things that may be important to your particular challenge. There were two teams. The team that was using the technology found the soldier first. So that's kind of the takeaway from this. It was just a live exercise. What else do I have? Oh, I don't know if we want to get into, we want to get into imagery management. I thought I took these out. You know, we were talking earlier about managing your content, and there's essentially three ways, right? You have the top, which is enterprise on-prem. You have the middle section, which is image for online, and then you have the bottom, which is a dedicated you know, server in the cloud instance. All of those have different implications on your strategy. You know, and then there's different implications on who can do what processing. To give people some ideas on questions and answers, and we can get into the imagery management if people want to spend more time on it, but I hate to do that if it's not of interest to everyone. So, you know, I think some of our challenges that we work with organizations on is almost everyone has a desire to modernize and keep up with technology. That's another and never ending process, right? And you want to try to use COTS over custom applications whenever you can. I mean, I think Jimmy was showing some great work that he was doing with the experience builder and imagery that they were collecting over a particular area with drones. And you know, he also spent time explaining how and why it's important to be authoritative, right? Compressing time is something that we talked about. The more you can automate, the more you can get people to use it. You know, the quicker things come of value, and the reduction in transaction time often is a, you know, it's a double hit. You get a reduction in cost, and you get an increase in available time to do other things. Some of the things that people struggle with are, you know, whether or not they want to deploy to the cloud. Some people are still very focused on doing it with their own IT shops. That's fine. Going to the cloud has other implications, and it really depends on what's best for your organization. We work with sizing requirements when it comes to, I think the Mass DOT guys referred to their data lake. That's always been something of interest to me. But you know, like I said, there's large organizations, and there's small organizations, and there's no one right or wrong way. Remember that your voice matters. Reach out to me if you want an invitation to join this group. There's no big deal. It's free. It's just they're trying to manage the group as we speak. So send me a request, and I'll send you an invitation. Katie, you would ask me to put together some links for you know, learning and documentation. I don't expect people to try to scribble all this down. I'll provide this, but there's quite a bit of free information out there, and probably 80% of those links will take you to you know, free tutorials that will run you through how to deal with those particular items. The reality overlap issue is something that we can spend a couple of seconds on in a bit. Key issues, I've covered them before. You'll hear me say them over and over and over again if you find time to work with us. What are your applications? How many services? What's your workforce? How do you want to task them? They can be large, they can be small, they can have experience, they may not. It all depends. And the rest that we see here, I'm not going to read it to you. Some more entertainment for this is a combination of what you can see with what you can't, and so that's an example I like to bring up, because in this application they're going to use thermal imagery as well as RGB imagery to determine some information about the solar panels, and that's the cone of orientation that we get from the EO file that basically shows what you can see from the direction that the sensor is in. You can see some toggles down at the bottom where they can go from oriented imagery to RGB to thermal. And so this is, the huge messages here is there's more than imagery that you can see, right? Take advantage of also the things that you can't see. When you get into near IR, there's also some value in that, in being able to work with impervious surfaces, and that's in one of the links that I showed. So here you can see they're combining RGB and thermal. That may or may not support your applications, right? So another interesting example is this is an inspection of a utility. And essentially, what I like about this is it shows enough detail that you can see the high quality levels of detail, not only in the substation, but also in just a sec you're going to see. And this is a point cloud. This is not an image on the left. And you can see where the transmission lines are going down the street, and you can see where vegetation is encroaching. That in this particular instance is what we're trying to figure out, right? Where do the bushes have to be cut back, or the trees have to be cut back? And that, I think, is it. I do believe. I do have this. So you heard me earlier talk about 3D base maps instead of 2D base maps. This is an example of where we took 15 images that were not collected for this purpose, and we're able to stitch them together so that you could look at a high level of detail of your imagery, right? If this had been collected for the purpose, we would get a higher level of detail. But as Jimmy was showing, there are measure tools and things along those lines. I can turn on a second viewer and see.
We're still seeing your PowerPoint. I'm not sure if that's what you're referencing.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
You maybe just shared that instead of your whole screen. So if you stop sharing and
how about now?
There you go. I see a web scene now.
Yeah, so this is, to me, better than a 2D base map, right? We're trying to develop this for an entire organization, an entire state, an entire county, whatever. But you can see there's a lot more detail. And in this case, it wasn't collected with a drone, and it wasn't collected for this purpose. I think the actual overlap was 60-30. When you get out into what I'm going to call suburbia or rural America, your overlap needs to be higher. And one of the things, I love to see the demos of cities like Boston and other densely occupied areas, but there's need to do it out in the rural, and that's what I wanted to demonstrate, is it is possible. And this is, like I said, this was not imagery that was collected for this purpose, but if we can get the right data on it, you can develop this kind of product, right? So anyhow, that's what I have. I think I've run out of time, probably gone over time, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure Sinan and Jimmy will answer questions as well if there are any.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom and Sanan and Jimmy, for your presentations. I did see that there was one question in the chat directed to the Mass DOT folks. They were asking if culverts are one of the asset types that you're monitoring.
The short answer, yes, but we fly a lot of assets. Culvert is not on the top of the list, but we do monitor it.
The follow-up to that, Sunan, do you, with your imagery, do any kind of AI or machine learning to find assets?
That would be our next step. So things I didn't talk about that we are trying to improve our workflow, improve our data lake storage framework, and then improve our dissemination portal too. So there's like many areas that we've been working on. One of the areas that we worked on and we tested extensively, it's the analysis using the reality capture. And now reality capture became one of the major tools that we used for our in our production line. But in the future, yeah, I mean, in the I think next year we will be the testing with more deep learning and machine learning.
Got time for maybe one or two more questions if people have any. All right, well, I want to say thank you again to all of our speakers. Thank you all for joining us. I will be processing this recording and sending a follow-up email with some resources, and that'll also include contact details for our speakers. So if you do have any follow-up questions, then you can feel free to reach out with them to them directly. And again, reminder about that user group that Tom mentioned, that we'll include that in the follow-up email too. So if you really want to get more involved, then encourage you to join that group. One final plug for NEARC, save the date, please, May 21st, Salem State University for Spring NEARC, and save the date October 27th through the 30th in Burlington, Vermont. And please keep your eyes out on the listserv for more community events like this. If you have ideas for community events, if you want to get involved, share your work, propose ideas, anything, please contact me. I'm always looking for new ideas and support and collaboration. So we'd love to hear from you. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.